Hi folks, Iron Geek here. Unfortunately, the device that was capturing the camera had some problems. We thought we were still getting sound because the indicators were still showing sound, but that did not work out. I do have audio in this talk once you get to the 21-minute mark or so, or you can go see the version that they performed at B-Sides Nashville this year. Sorry for the inconvenience.
All right, so that's what it's like running just locally. That's pretty useful for if you only have, your home lab is just a desktop or a laptop with a few VMs on it. If you have kind of a dedicated lab environment, then you might have 10, 20 systems running on it, and you don't want to have to go in and execute the script after logging in as your target user. So that's where we use the remote stuff. So we're going to jump to our lab that's up in AWS, which has a number of systems on it, and show you what it's like to do some of that remote configuration and execution of the script.
So let's take a look at that config file before we actually run it here. So this is what it looks like for our script at the moment. The server IP is specifying the server we're running this from, because it'll actually create a share there that the remote hosts need to read back to just once, but need to reach back to actually grab the content of the script. Then our check-in intervals here and link depth, and then here's our actual hosts that we're going to run on.
So same command here, except we don't have a standalone flag. We've got the config XML flag, and then specify that file we just showed you. And we can just go ahead and...
So this is actually a different function inside the tool.
Right.
Invoke configure hosts will run that configuration we talked about. So we're going to do that first before we actually kick it off.
Yeah, and this is just going to add all of our users to the remote desktops group and change those couple registry key settings we were talking about. The red arrows you see right here is our lazy programming of those users are already assigned to the groups on these workstations. So it's just giving you an error saying that the user is already in the remote desktops group. So it's not breaking anything. It's just not handling that error very well right now. So once you've configured your remote host based on your config file, you should be able to just run it. And if you give it the all flag, it should do both internet browsing, the share mapping, and then also it should check the email for any new emails and open up attachments and links. You want to go over how it's doing all the remote stuff there?
Yeah. So you can see a bunch of output here. To kick off the remote tasks, we're actually using schedule tasks because that was the easiest way we could find to kick off those tasks in the interactive session. Most of the other ways that come to mind, like WMI or PSExec or that kind of thing, will run those tasks in session 0, which does not show up at all and would not be how a real user runs Internet Explorer or Outlook or anything. So that's the big object you can see here is the scheduled task object. And then you can see some CMD key things here. That's what we're using to do the scripted remote desktop. So adding the credentials to the local CMD key here, which adds them to the credential manager, saves them as like associated with that target, and then cleaning up afterwards after we do the remote desktop.
So we should have 4 of these remote desktop sessions running, and hopefully they all have Internet Explorer up by now. Looks like they do. That's good. Maybe even on our Reddit one, you'll see it go to a different link than its homepage.
Yeah, we'll use something other than the BBC for that demo. That's gone somewhere.
So what we wanted to show next was what it looks like to do a phishing campaign on these users.
We can just send a link to start.
Yep, we can send a link too. So the Outlook functionality of this, what it does right now is it does the send receive and then it waits like a solid minute or so, because we were finding that if you try to do a send receive and then open email right away, it's going to miss a lot of email. So you got to give it some time for new email to come in from the mail server. Should also note that if you want to simulate phishing campaigns like this, you do have to have Office installed, Outlook for this tool, and then Outlook has to be configured to be connected to a mail server. So whether that's GPO settings, automatically configuring your user to set up their Outlook account when they first log in, or if you go in and do that configuration yourself. We don't have that as part of the configuration script right now. If it's not too much, that's something we're looking to add into it later. All right, did you send that to everyone?
Yep, send it to all 4 of these.
All right, so in a minute or so, we should see a new Internet Explorer process pop up on these hosts, going to Google, I think you put in. And what we do with that is if you're sending links, we only spawn that Internet Explorer process for 15 seconds before we kill it. So that way you can do this a bunch of times and not have like 30 Internet Explorer sessions running on your remote hosts and bogging it down. So hopefully this comes through shortly. This is my fail-safe to check to see if Outlook is actually doing scripted Outlook things. We've managed to land on some interesting pages here. MSN and some other language.
I'm going to put her away.
All right, we've got Google. Here we go.
You can see Google over on this one.
And that should also get killed and go away shortly. So you can see these emails come in at different times on each of these systems, just based on however our mail server is feeling like delivering the emails. All right, so we can also send more malicious payloads than just links. So we have a demo Office macro attack configured here, which is going to use Cobalt Strike, and it's just using the default beacon macro that comes built in with the tool. So we don't have AV or anything like that configured on these systems because this would definitely get caught, but it works for demonstration purposes. So after that gets sent out, we should have the uncomfortable wait period again, but then once the emails come in, they should save those attachments to one of those trusted directories. I think it's like appdata/temp or something like that. And then open them, and that'll automatically execute the macro, and we should see some command and control channels come back here in a minute. That guy just got his Google email.
Yeah, these guys are lagging today.
Yep. We hadn't considered it yet, just because Internet Explorer is what we see most places, but it wouldn't be hard to add it in there. IE is pretty safe because it's always going to be installed on your Windows systems that you're running it on. So if we wanted to do Chrome or something, we would probably add it as like a flag to specify Chrome or Firefox.
I guess another safe way to do that would be to go with the default browser.
Yep, you could do that too. Hey,
somebody got owned.
All right, so one of our users managed to open that email and enable macros or enable content and run the macro, all without us having to go onto that system and touch anything. So when you just have a couple of systems, it's not so bad to do it yourself, but you can see how having this running on an environment with 30 different users would really make your phishing campaigns and other attack scenarios a lot more realistic.
Given how long it took for our second Google to show up, this might be another minute. But.
Yeah. So the only limitation so far on scaling out to larger environments is that it does open up a remote desktop process to each system, but that actually doesn't take up like that much memory or processing or anything if it's not doing it, and you can disconnect those sessions. So we've considered doing things like closing those sessions after they open. We haven't run it on 20, 30 systems yet, so it hasn't been an issue for us, but we've also made some minor adjustments to the scheduled task and configured auto logins. So like for the labs that we give people, we have it just run as an auto login script. So that way anytime we boot up the system, it'll be persistent through reboots and just automatically log the user on and then start the task on logon. So it should scale pretty well. If you're trying to do it on a ton of systems with remote desktop, it might get buggy and slowed out on your remote server that you're launching it from, but we haven't actually ran into any performance issues with that yet.
You, sir.
I think we've managed to get back all of our C2 channels as well. So that seems to have worked.
Survived another live cloud demo. It's dangerous.
All right, so some of the future work that we want to do with this tool is mostly around adding additional user behavior. Right now, it's kind of limited in what types of activities it simulates, even though we think, opening emails, browsing the internet, mapping shares, that sort of activity is kind of the bulk of what the average user is going to do day to day. We want to be able to expand that a little bit, and especially in the phishing realm of things, a lot of phishing attacks aren't necessarily sending macros out. You might be just trying to collect credentials. So we want to build it in a way to automatically submit credentials to log on forms on web pages that you visit, and also enable you to download and execute hosted files. So instead of sending an attachment, you could host your payload and then send a link, and the user would go to the link, download, and execute the file. We've also want to do actual file read writes to the network shares. So not just trying to map illegitimate shares that don't exist, but also going to real shares and doing file reads and writes just to kind of create some more legitimate looking network traffic. We also are considering a C# version. So if you're doing anything crazy with whitelisting or you don't have PowerShell in your lab on certain systems, you can just drop an executable to disk and run it, and it should be fine. So we also want to kind of branch out and do more than just your average user simulation with a tool that would simulate kind of sysadmin type activities. So anything from remote PowerShell commands, administrative logins, making configuration changes. And one of the big reasons for that is we want to open up the tool to, right now it's kind of focused on, for red teamers and pen testers to make the lab more realistic and go in and learn how to hack things. But we also realize that labs can be really useful for blue teams too. So if you have a SIM in your lab and you're ingesting a bunch of logs, if you're just running this tool and having your attackers go in and create red team traffic or using like a red team automation type tool, it's going to be really easy for your threat hunters or your SOC analysts to go into your SIM and identify all the bad traffic, because you can probably just say, okay, well, anywhere PowerShell with a 500 character command line length was run, that's where all my bad guys are. So this should hopefully expand that to create some additional legitimate looking remote administration type traffic to make it more realistic for actually identifying malicious behavior. Anything to add?
No, that's it.
All right, well, I know we're a bit early. Our demo went smoother than expected. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them now. Go ahead.
Are you guys thinking of expanding this out to other operating systems? Is that what the C# version is supposed to be for?
We haven't considered that yet. it's an interesting thought. I don't think we have any plans to immediately do that because there's lots of stuff we want to still add on with just the Windows version, but I can see how it'd be useful, so we'll keep it on the radar for things to do when we run out of other ideas. All right, any more? We still have a $50 gift certificate, but I guess it goes to that man. All right, well, thanks everyone. We'll be around for a while after this, so if you have questions or think of something you didn't want to ask here, we'll be around outside. Thanks.